everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Filipino American Women Project. And yes, I am wearing the same shirt as the last interview because sometimes we do back-to-back interviews, and I'll talk about the shirt in a second. But I'm Jen Amos. I am the founder, producer, and co-host of the Filipino American Women Project. And this show would not be possible without my co-host, Nani Dominguez. So Nani, welcome back.
Thank you. Welcome back, everybody.
Yes, and we're excited because every time we get to do another show, it means that we get to interview another incredible person in our community. But before we get into that, I want to give some announcements, as I always do. So first and foremost, if you haven't already, pull out your phone, especially if you're already listening from your phone, that might as well, and put down our number. Our number here at TFAW Project is 415-484-8329, or that's the letters TFAW as in the Filipino American Woman. So once again, that's 415-484-8329. And feel free to text us or leave us a voice message, especially if this conversation resonates with you and you want to let us know. That's our phone number. Nani and I mentioned this a couple of times already on our show, but we like to set healthy boundaries with social media. And so a lot of our time now is being spent on our newsletter. So if you want to be in community with us, or you want to collaborate with us or contribute to the newsletter, check out the show notes of this episode or visit tfawproject.com, tfawproject.com to sign up and subscribe to our newsletter. We'd love to have you on there. Speaking of our website, tfawproject.com, our website wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for our sponsor, Captivate. So that's the shirt I'm wearing right now. I'm going to pull it kind of over here. And Captivate is a really great podcasting platform for new podcasters who don't want to go through the hassle of putting a website together. Like they don't want to deal with coding or anything. And so it's a really easy way to get started. And if you are on WordPress, you could actually just use, Captivate has a plugin for WordPress so that you can just add your podcast show on the website that you already have. So thank you to Captivate for being our sponsor. And if you want to get an idea of what their websites look like, again, you can check out our website, tfawproject.com. Very user-friendly, very mobile-friendly, just very friendly website. And of course, I always like to encourage people, if you enjoy our show and you want to tell the world, we would appreciate you leaving us a 5-star written review. Nothing else. If you're thinking about anything less than a 5-star, just don't. Just tell me. Tell me. Like you can text me at 415-484-8329 and tell me why you're thinking about giving me something less than a 5-star. I'm just kidding, but not kidding. So would love to hear from you and really, give our show that representation and share with the world, why the show is awesome. And that's it. That's all the announcements I have. Nani, anything from you?
Nope, that's it.
Cool. All right. So with that said, let's go ahead, Nani, and introduce our guest for today.
Yay. Okay, everyone, say hello to Raquel Villanueva Dang, self-taught chef, pharmaceutical associate director, and solidarity advocate. Raquel, welcome to the show.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yes, it's absolutely our pleasure having you. We were totally Insta-stalking you like we usually do with our guest. And I just have to say, I love the work that you're doing. I know that Nani had reached out to you, but why don't you share, why did you say yes to join us on our show and share your story?
I love what you guys are doing and really creating this amazing space for women like us to uplift each other. And I think times like this, it's so important to embrace who we are in all our unique ways and differences. So I think it's great that you guys are doing that and creating a space where, we can just give positive vibes for each other, because we all know there's just so much negativity out there. So the more positive we can push, I think it's amazing and it's beautiful. So wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I think it's just so easy to be negative. It's so easy to criticize. It's so easy to put people down, right? But it's so much harder to focus on positivity, focus on gratitude, and focus on creating something that's useful for not just yourself, but for other people. So thank you for being a part of it by being part of the conversation today.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah. All right, cool. So Raquel, this show, we are constantly expanding the definition of Filipino American women. And I typically get into the whole definition, like how we dive into it. But I would just love for you actually to share your family background and why you identify as a Filipino American woman.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like that's such an interesting question, because maybe had you asked that question to me 15 years ago, I feel like my definition of like my identity would be so different than what I define myself as now, which is absolutely Filipino American woman. So my parents came here from the Philippines in the 80s. and I consider myself first generation Filipino American. They came from the Philippines and they met here in the States and they got married in New Jersey. So I grew up on the East Coast in New Jersey for the majority of my childhood through high school. And then now I reside in Philadelphia, which is not too far away from where I grew up, so about 2 hours. I think growing up was different for me because I grew up in a predominantly white town. And if someone was to ask me how I identify myself, I would say American. Mm-hmm. And being Filipino was kind of a side thought. It was this idea of, I live in America, I want to blend in. I don't want to stick out. Because I already stick out by the way that I look. I don't want to stick out now because I'm eating some funky food at lunchtime. I don't want to stick out because my mom is speaking a different language than other people. So I felt like I didn't truly identify as a Filipino American woman until I was in my 20s when I was like, damn, I'm proud. I'm proud of my parents for working their ass off so that we could have a better life. Like, I truly didn't realize how much my culture played a part in creating who I was until later in life. And I feel like I missed out on a lot of my culture growing up because I was too busy trying to fit into the majority. Spend a lot of my time being creative in my food venture and sharing my culture, not only just to share what it's like to be Filipino, but to encourage others to embrace everything about themselves that makes them different. Because I think it's truly beautiful when you can appreciate how you are, who you become without trying to fit a mold, which it becomes tough, right? I feel like as women, we, try to fit this mold of who we think we're supposed to be until we realize, fuck it, I'm going to be who I want to be. And if the world loves me, cool. And if they don't, I'm good too. So I think I've reached that point in my life where I'm happy being who I am without trying to fit any type of definition.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful. It gets me to think about, I think fitting in, especially starting from childhood, was a form of survival. We needed to fit in. We had to follow whatever our parents were, whatever house rules they had set on us. And then, being American, when you start to venture out, it's like you start to realize you don't have to do that anymore, or you don't have to fit in anymore. And I think it's like that interesting transition of like, okay, do I continue to try to fit in? Or I just think kind of that transitional moment where you're like, okay, I'm going to embrace who I am. It's such a courageous act. And a lot of times it's like a voice that we hear inside. It's like, you don't have to do that anymore. Like, you can be who you want to be now. And some people still are waiting to maybe get permission for that. To say like, hey, you can go off and be yourself now. Like, it's okay. Like, you're going to survive, And so that's a little bit about what I was thinking of as you were sharing your story.
Yeah. And I always found it interesting too, as relative to other Asian American or Asian groups. It's interesting for Filipinos because when, our parents came here or their parents, depending on what generation you are, they came to America already speaking English. Like, they're very, they speak English in the Philippines. So I feel like it's such an interesting dynamic when you think about Filipinos coming to the States, because it's much easier for them to assimilate. They already speak the language. They not necessarily like other Asian groups where they had to gravitate towards communities where there were a lot of Chinese people or Korean people. Like, there were a lot more Filipinos going to areas where maybe there wasn't a big Filipino community. So I feel like it's such an interesting dynamic when you think about how Filipino culture in America has become such a blend with Western culture already, because that already existed back home in the Philippines when there was so much Western influence already from the Spanish, from the Americans, and now they came to America. So like, our culture is almost like it's already diluted a bit, right? We already diluted more because now we're in America. And I kind of have got to this place where now it's this new culture, this Filipino American culture, which doesn't make us any less Filipino. It just now becomes this new kind of like subcategory of Filipino culture. So I feel like there's also this interesting dynamic where, some Filipinos come here and they kind of look, and I've experienced this, and I don't know if you guys have experienced this, where more traditional Filipinos kind of look at Filipino Americans as, oh, you're not Filipino enough. And that's always that kind of like intersection of, you're not quite Filipino, but you're not quite American. And then you kind of have to find justification of being in this like in between, but that's okay. And I'm at that place where it's like, embrace it. Like, it's great to be in between two beautiful cultures.
Yeah. I've definitely felt that, or observed that, I should say, in like Filipinos from the Philippines and Filipinos that live here, or Filipino Americans. And it's like, yeah, there are definitely, you know, some distinct like differences in practices and traditions and just ways that we live our lives, because we live here in America and we benefit from certain privileges that just aren't in the Philippines. And so, of course, we've developed our own kind of subculture, but again, the way that we're raised and the way that our culture has been conditioned is to compare and to compete so much, not only within our community, but outside of it as well. So growing up, I mean, we talked about this a little bit in our last episode, and I know that this is just a running theme that people have felt is as they get older, there's some point in their life, whether it's you have a kid or you have a bad breakup or whatever kind of catapults you into your identity crisis, where it's like, oh, now I have to redefine what being Filipino American means and what that looks like on me. Like our last guest had said, you know, it looks different on everyone. And I think that we're kind of coming to a head in our community, at least, to where we can really respect and appreciate that difference instead of ostracizing people for it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's amazing. And when I had started my food venture and I do pop-ups, I knew that I wasn't going to create dishes that were traditional Filipino dishes.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I knew I wanted to create something that was truly reflective of how I grew up, where my mom was cooking Filipino food, but she did such a good job of also cooking other things that regular American kids would eat. So I've always had this really cool blend of Filipino flavors and American food. And that's what I wanted to show through my cooking, to create these dishes that were nostalgic of Filipino flavors, but maybe they looked a little bit more
remixed. Yeah.
Yeah, remix. Exactly. It's like childhood remix. Exactly.
I love that. Yes.
And it's been such a great creative outlet. But there were times where, you know, I always wondered if I knew that I would have some guests that were from the Philippines, like, what are they going to think? Like, are they going to be like, oh, this is not Filipino food. This isn't,
right.
This isn't like how my mom would make it. Because like you said, you know how Filipinos can be very judgmental, at least maybe the older generations. So I always, in the back of my mind, I think if a Filipino person comes that's more traditional, are they going to judge me? And it's okay to be judged, and I'm always ready for that. But I remember this moment when I had a guest and she came to our supper club. So we hold these supper clubs where strangers can book seats. And this was pre-COVID. Strangers can book seats at our table and they don't really know what the menu is. They just tell me what their allergies are. And I cook a 4-course dinner and everyone.
Ooh, sign me up. I want this.
Let's go to New Jersey, Nani.
Yes, let's meet in New Jersey. I'm so down.
Philadelphia. She's in Philadelphia.
Oh yeah. Either way, still down.
When you guys come out to the East Coast, you've got a place here in Philly. So.
Yes.
But we host these supper clubs where people book seats and they share dinner essentially with a table full of strangers. And I remember I had a guest who was Filipino and she was coming with her husband, but she was a friend of a former guest and he had texted me earlier. I was like, oh, she's from the Philippines. Like, she's really excited. She hasn't had Filipino food. And I remember thinking in my head, dang, is she going to be like, this is not Filipino food? And she enjoyed every dish. And as she left that night, so usually it's like 2 or 3 hours because people just enjoy their time. We have great conversations with each other. We talk about culture. It's just such a great, like, connecting experience.
Yeah.
And as she left that day after dinner, she was like, thank you so much. Like, this reminded me of home. And I was like, literally like about to cry, because it means so much that you can kind of like put your identity on a plate as a chef. You put your identity on a plate and you don't know if your guest eating your food is going to like it. But when they can taste something and they can taste a piece of themselves in that dish because it reminds them of something, like, that is it's so meaningful, like, as, you know, as an artist, as a chef or anything. So in that moment, what she said to me made me feel like she kind of saw who I was and what I was putting out there, and she embraced it. So I feel like there's this like really amazing thing happening. And Nani, you were saying that where, you know, being Filipina and being Filipino American looks different on everyone. And we're at this point where we're really embracing what that looks like. And it's awesome.
Yeah, we're all little remixes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, one thing I want to add to this is that I feel like in many of our perspectives where we kind of butt heads with traditional Filipinos, as we're calling them here, and we say like, hey, they're judging us, like they're so judgmental. And, you know, I was just thinking just now that maybe the reason why they're so judgmental is maybe they're coming from a place of maybe discomfort. Like maybe, you know, just like what you said, like, you know, the lady thanked you, you know, she felt like she had a taste of home. And I think that, you know, for a lot of the traditional Filipinos, like that's really what they're looking for. And they project that on you. Like it's maybe out of fear for them, like, oh my gosh, like what's happening to my culture? Is it disappearing here? You know? And so in a way, I don't know if that's true, but I think in my head, like maybe that's why it comes off as if they're judging, because really they're just feeling like maybe their reality or what's comfortable to them is being shooken up a bit. And maybe it's even triggering for them because it's coming from another Filipino. You know, they kind of maybe expect other Filipinos to be like them, to have the same experiences like them. And, you know, obviously what we come to find is that, you know, we all have different definitions and experiences of being Filipino. And so when I look at it that way, I feel like I can empathize with them now, or I can understand them now and be like, you know, just like what you said, Raquel, like, it's okay to be judged. Like, I'll take it, you know, cause it's not, I don't think it's even about you. It's their own, you know, discomfort, like maybe feeling like it doesn't feel like home. Therefore I don't feel safe, or therefore fill in the blank.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah. Anyway, I made that up. I don't know if it's true. That's my guess though.
I think it is true. And I also think that can, you know, we're not just speaking to or about like the elder people in our culture, or like the older generations, I guess I should say, that kind of empathy can go both ways. If, you know, like the elders do that to us, but we also do it to each other because we've learned it from them. Right. And so if we can keep that like mindset, I guess, as like the template for how we approach conversations with people who are different from us for whatever reason, I think that we could all stand to learn a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very curious because you had mentioned, you know, in your story and growing up that you would identify most with being American. So what was that point for you where you were like, okay, I'm going to embrace my culture and I'm going to start Tita Emmy's? Like, what was the story around that? I'm very curious to know, because it's like, I embrace my culture, but I'm not going to start a restaurant, you know, to prove it, you know? So I'm just curious, like, how did you know, or how did it come to that place where like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to put my interpretation of Filipino into this cuisine?
I think it was more of a journey, honestly. I think when I decided I'm going to do Tita Emmy's, I want to put this out there. It was a couple of years ago, and I was later in my 20s. But I think when things really started turning around in terms of like how I really saw my identity was probably when I went away for college. And I think likely because one really big thing was I was finally away from my family. And growing up in my family, my parents were very strict. I was the oldest. I was the only girl. I wasn't allowed to sleep over friends' houses. I wasn't allowed to go out anywhere late. Like, I had very strict parents. And I think when I went to college, I went a little bit crazy because, you know, so I went to University of the Sciences here in Philadelphia. So I was away from home. It was my first time living away from home, and I was just living. I was
Love it.
Really coming to understand who I was, what I enjoyed. And I feel like at that point, when I was away from my family, was when I really realized how big culture actually played in making me who I am. I think a big part of that was finally seeing that I grew up in this predominantly white town. My family, and it was predominantly wealthy, but my family actually lived in the part of town that was poor, kind of like we were just like lower income. My parents were blue collar. We didn't have a lot of money, but they worked their asses off so that we could live there, so that we could have a good life. And, you know, my titas were there too, and they helped our family a lot. And I think it wasn't until I left home and I went to school that I realized that moment I left school, that was everything my parents were working towards. They wanted their kids, because they never graduated from college. They came to America. They wanted their kids to have a good education and to continue into college and to have a good career. And I realized when I was in college that was like their first big milestone, like my first kids in college. Like that's like, I've been working so hard for this. And it wasn't until I was away that I realized I was their American dream. Like me going to school, me finishing school, being the first of my family to graduate from college, being the first of my family to own a home. Like I literally was my parents' American dream. And I think that's so true for not just other Filipinos, but a lot of immigrants. And at that moment in college, when I came to that realization, it brought me so much closer to my family and really understanding why they were so strict, why tradition was so important. And I think being an immigrant, being a Filipino, you center your life around family and around working hard. And I'm still very much, I think I get a lot of my work ethic from my parents. So I have a full-time job in the pharmaceutical industry, but I also do eat the Emmys on the side. So I've always just worked so hard. And I think after college and I started my career in the pharmaceutical industry, I was in consulting for a while. I feel like I started living my parents' American dream, and I was working a great career, and it was a great salary. It's very stable. It was kind of what every parent wants their kid to have, like a really just stable career. Yeah. And I realized I was living kind of the life that my parents wanted me to have, but I wasn't getting the creative part of it, which I feel like a part of my personality. I just love connecting with people. I love being creative and I love entertaining. So after college, and as I got later into my 20s, I found myself always entertaining and always cooking. And I tend to cook food that was nostalgic of my childhood. So I would start having a lot of dinner parties. And it kind of evolved into this thing where I was spending a lot of time showing creativity through food. And it kind of evolved into this idea of, well, why don't I kind of see where this goes? And my friends and my family were like, hey, this is actually amazing. I think you should try it. And that kind of evolved into my supper club idea, where Eat the Emmys became now this reflection of my childhood, but then kind of this way for me to pay tribute to my mom and my titas that showed love through food. Because in my family, it wasn't I love you. It was, here's a bowl of sinigang, I made you. And it's because it's my favorite. So that was the way that my family showed love. And now it's kind of like, my parents gave me the ability to have this great career. And now I kind of want to pay tribute to them by embracing our culture and kind of showing how it became who I am today. And I try to share that through food.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I think that as Filipino Americans, we can all relate to that experience of kind of just, when we're younger, keeping our heads down, doing what our parents tell us, and kind of being told or conditioned not to stray off of that path. And like I said, there comes a certain point, either, you have a breakup, you have a kid, or in your instance, when you got to school or when you got your first stable job and you were like, this is really not my dream, this is really their dream. And once you realize that, at least in our generation and maybe the one before us, we are really tokens of our parents' success. And that narrative is a narrative of assimilation. So naturally, we, lead with that when we're interacting with other people. I think the first thing, even now, as we're like having these conversations and trying to change that narrative, we lead with like, oh, well, where are you from? What do you do? Like, what is it that you're doing? And I think that the shift there that needs to happen, that we're trying to achieve through, conversations like these and other podcasts and projects like, your Tita Emmys, however it manifests for you, is changing that narrative from the approach of what do you do to what's your story, I
love that. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of why I've taken to this supper club idea, on top of my day job, because we're able to share food with our guests. But then it's that part that you can't get at a traditional restaurant, where you can talk about what you're eating and what inspired that dish. And then there's this like beautiful moment where people who are not Filipino can say, well, you know what, this reminds me of this. And I ate this growing up. And then there's a story that's involved. And it's so beautiful to share stories and to use food as a vehicle, because it's one of the few mediums that connects us all, despite who you are, where you're from, how old you are. So it's really great to use food to connect people so organically too, especially at a dinner table.
Yeah, I agree. I think we definitely lead with food and Filipino culture, whether you're a traditional Filipino or a remixed Filipino American or somewhere else in the diaspora, we all can connect through food. And also these days, food is an art, you know? And so, like you said, you can really put your identity or attempt to show someone your identity by putting a plate of food in front of their face. And it's interesting to see how that, you know, translates for you in these supper club experiences.
Yeah, we all got to eat, so might as well add more to that. Tell a story, you know, connect with people. It's like you're gonna get hungry no matter what, so you're eventually gonna, especially if you cook well. It's like, oh, I'm gonna go back to you because you cook well. So I'm going to connect with you for that reason. I think that's powerful and that's beautiful. I don't think I've, heard of anyone talk about food in that way, like using food as a medium of storytelling. So, I can only imagine that you have or used to, I guess, reserve to get a seat or table. I can only imagine what that experience is like or was like, depending on the circumstances right now. So speaking of the circumstances right now, so typically on our show, we separate what does life look like today and the life lesson you want to share. But since you didn't fill that part out, so this works in our favor, let's go ahead and talk about life today, pandemic style, and share with us, like, what are you up to nowadays? What keeps you busy or excited? However you want to share that. And after that, and I'll remind you in case you forget, because I know people can really get into this question, but what's the biggest lesson you feel like you've learned so far in 2020?
Loaded question.
We'll start with part one.
Let's talk about questions.
I guess I should break it up still. I'm going to keep that. This is good feedback. But anyway, go ahead, Raquel.
So pandemic. So here in Philly, we had the first lockdown mid-March. And I work in an office in downtown. But starting mid-March, I was working from home. So my day-to-day looks like, and more recently, I've been crushed at work. I'm literally working 12, 15-hour days and just on my computer. So I need to do a better job of standing up. I literally just got this chair. If you guys can see my office chair, I just got this chair a week ago, but I've been using for the past 5 months an old dining chair, and my I'm old. Yeah. I need to be comfortable.
That must be painful. Yeah.
But so life has been working from home, Zoom calls, as you guys can imagine. I didn't see my family for a while. So even though they're an hour and a half away, my mom works at a nursing home. So, she's high risk. So, my husband didn't go see her for a while. I didn't see my dad for a while. It was kind of nuts. And my husband's in the military. So he was gone for 2 months. I was home with my dog for a couple months, just us. And it's been a roller coaster of emotions, to say the least, because you have this dynamic of working from home and kind of being separated from your family, your friends, your colleagues. So relearning how to connect with people virtually was a challenge, I think. And then you add on now, everyone's at home, because of COVID, but then you add on this additional layer of the social unrest. And this is something that I felt so deep in the Philadelphia community. There's a lot of tension between POC in Philadelphia and everywhere, and really just tension between all groups, between minorities and majority. So I feel like I've been on a really an emotional roller coaster, learning how to manage day to day in this virtual environment, but then also trying to understand what can I do as a member of my community to make things easier for people that are having a hard time and for everyone that's having a hard time. And I feel like it's so important to understand in this world that we're living in right now, where there's so many things going on. You have a pandemic, you have so much social unrest against the Black community, against the Asian American community. And there's just so many things I don't even know. I can't even begin to describe how I feel internally, except for exhausted from working, exhausted from trying to do my best with being a good friend and a good person and trying to be empathetic towards others. And then lastly, just trying to evolve with Tita Emmys on how can I continue my passion project in this new environment. So prior to the pandemic, we would host our supper clubs in our home, and we would do our pop-ups where we would take over restaurant kitchens, maybe once or twice a month. But now it's evolved into, in Philadelphia, you can't eat indoors yet. So we've been doing our supper clubs outdoors only on our rooftop, and we've now condensed it to only 6 guests. So it is different, but it allows us to continue connecting with people, serving food. We follow a lot of the same precautions that a restaurant would. So it's been interesting. I think the one thing that you learn is that you have to be flexible and you have to evolve. And if you don't, you're going to have a hard time. And if you have a hard time, it's okay also. Like, you got to give yourself time to adapt. So it's been interesting, but definitely an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. And, my heart goes out to the hospitality industry, the restaurant industry in general. It's just, I connected with someone recently who just graduated from a college to be a professional chef. And, right when COVID hit, and I've been following her story and like how much she's been struggling. It's like, oh, this is like the one thing that I felt like was consistent in my life, and now I can't do it. It's like now I have to reinvent myself, even though I invested all these years to be specialized in this way. And so it is a hard time. And I just commend you for your flexibility and your adaptability and just continuing to, do what you do with Tita Emmy's. And yeah, I could just only imagine. I think we all have Zoom fatigue, like we all are tired of staring at the screen. And, I even have a friend where like they had a headache for a couple of days because of staring at the screen for hours on end, and it's like, I totally get that. So, obviously there's not an answer today, we're not going to fix anything today, but I also like how you said, like, it's okay if you're having a hard time. Like a lot of us are having a hard time right now. So those are my thoughts on that.
It's tough all around, especially hospitality industry. And you say that, and I think about all the times that, I'm scrolling on IG and I see another announcement from, a restaurant in the Philadelphia community, and I'm sure you guys have too, where they're making an announcement that we have to close because they've spent 4 or 5 months not making any income. So it's so heartbreaking because you want to be able to help where you can, but sometimes it's just not enough and you can't kind of reverse things. So it's such hard times. It's so hard for me to even conceptualize sometimes how I feel about it, because I feel like then something else happens and like your attention is now on something else. Like 2020 has been the wildest year of my lifetime for sure. I feel like it's so nuts.
Bizarre.
Yeah, that literally reminds me of yet another meme that I saw somewhere online, but it was like a person just sitting in their living room on a Zoom call, like on their laptop, and outside there's like this pano window that shows you like explosions and volcanoes and war, and literally I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's so true.
I feel that exact same way too. Like every time you sit down and try and unpack like what's going on and how do I connect to this and how can I contribute in this moment, then you turn around and something else happens. And that's part of the reason why I just have not had the capacity to get on Instagram like that lately. Like I used to be on there all day posting stories and interacting with people and sending people things. And now it's like I get on there for 5 minutes and I'm already like, okay, I need to stop. I need to unplug now. So yeah, I know it's difficult. And I feel like we're being forced or pushed into such like a transformative moment, and so many people are not ready for it. You know what I mean? So many people aren't, they're fighting, they're resisting the urge to evolve. And, in some instances you can't do that, like restaurants, if you don't have space to seat people outside, what do you do? And so it's an interesting time to be living through for sure. But I'm glad that you are actively trying to seek out ways that you can plug back in and at least offer some kind of assistance to the moment, even if it's just standing in solidarity, because that's also incredibly important.
Yeah, I think like if there's any silver lining to all of this, just really seeing people coming together more than ever. I mean, obviously it's very polarizing. There's some people that just want to destroy the nation, and there's people that want to build up the nation. But, at least in my experience, it's just nice to like see people have more of like a maybe philanthropic heart. Like they want to give back. They want to do something. They want to volunteer. They want to give. They want to donate if they can. And so it is interesting. And, even with all these current events, I am kind of wondering, like, did these current events always exist? We just weren't paying attention in a way. Sure. But now that we're at home, we have time to self-reflect and to look at the news. Like even for myself, I've been into current events more so than ever for some reason. I mean, my husband's a big like history / latest, what's going on in the news today kind of person. So now I feel like I could sort of have a conversation with him about those things. But yeah, these are very interesting times. But I thought I'd ask, because I do want to try to make sure we end on some kind of positive note, because I don't want to end this like, yeah, the world sucks. Okay, bye. Which it does. They can coexist. Like the world sucking and the world doing good things, they can coexist. That's okay.
The world is blowing up, but it's also revolutionizing itself.
Exactly. They can coexist. So Raquel, with your experience so far, and I know you already mentioned like, this time has really shown you to be more flexible and adaptable. Do you see like maybe any silver lining? Do you see anything positive coming out of the year for you?
Yeah, I think you were kind of touching on that already. Just, being a part of the movement of bringing people together. And things have gotten so bad that I think there are more people that are standing together, and a lot of people tackling very uncomfortable conversations that maybe they wouldn't have in the past. For example, within our own, Filipino communities, our Asian communities, there is a lot of things that you grow up acting on, or just, the way that we're raised, are some sentiments of, in my opinion, anti-Black rhetoric, or just like prejudice that exists. And it exists in the form of something as simple as your mom saying, don't go outside because you're going to get dark, which is kind of brings this subtlety of if you're darker,
colorism.
Colorism, exactly. Like it's not ideal, right? If you're darker. So I think one of the greatest things that have come out of this pandemic is the ability to take a step back and slow down, because we got nowhere to go. We're all at home.
Right.
Really self-reflect and think about how we see the world. And is the way that we see the world today, is that truly how we want to see the world? Or is there room for us to change our perspective? And can we change it by listening to others and by understanding it? I think that's probably one of the best things, I think, that, at least for me, that I've witnessed, is really more people standing up for themselves, but also for each other, and truly seeing that those two can coexist. Because I've seen instances where people have, especially in our Asian community, because we've been receiving a lot of racism with COVID.
Right.
And it's tough too on our front. And it's like, I've seen a lot of instances where Asian Americans say, I can't fight for BLM because Asian lives are more important, or we need to stand up for it, as if they can't coexist.
Right.
It can. It absolutely can. And us fighting for different communities, I don't think in any way takes away from our own struggle. I feel like we can do those two things together. So I think I've spent a lot of time trying to encourage this notion of solidarity, because, one struggle against one marginalized group will, fighting towards that will help others as well. So I think that's probably the best thing, just this ability now for people to connect, and we're putting more effort into connecting because we can't see each other, physically. So I feel like the world has at least become a little bit more understanding and empathetic. And then of course there's the opposite, but I'm seeing more of let's understand each other. Let's have a conversation so we can see each other's perspectives, even if it's not the most comfortable conversation.
For sure. Oppression is oppression and discrimination is discrimination. So however we experience those, in our different communities, we are entitled, of course, always entitled to those personal experiences, and no one should be trying to negate anyone's experience or minimize anyone else's experience based on their own. But the more that we listen to others and find ourselves in their struggle or relate to their experiences, the more, we realize it is a shared struggle and we do need to come together in order to dismantle it.
Absolutely.
I was just thinking, I'm trying to figure out how to articulate this, but like, you ever have those like those friends that like, I don't know, just kind of like get into a fight just to get into a fight, like to argue just to argue.
Yeah.
And I feel like because they can't do that in person anymore, they've become a lot nicer. It's like that, like sometimes people want to connect through anger, right? Like they get upset and stuff like that. But I feel like there's something about this pandemic now where people like, they can't do that to people anymore, especially in person. And so I think people are becoming a little nicer too. That's my hope. That's my hope, that with friends who have acted that way or reacted in that kind of way to people are like, oh, like I miss you though, like I miss you. And I don't want to show it through anger anymore. I hope that made sense. But that was just.
No, it does. I think, I think you're right. I could see instances where that is probably at play.
Yeah. We're being forced to find different ways to communicate and express ourselves, I think is what it is. And so we're seeing people, get agitated in their inability to do that, which is where we see them projecting, all kinds of negativity and nonsense onto other people. And then there are the people who are trying to heal themselves and their communities. And those are the people that are, spreading the love that's so needed right now in this moment of complete freaking chaos.
Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. Well, what a powerful conversation. Raquel, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing with us a little bit about your background and just the good work you're doing. I'm curious because, Emmys is not in your name. So is that inspired by someone in your life?
So yeah, my mom's name is Ermelita. So her nickname is Emmy. So my mom's not quite old enough to be a Lola. So if I called it like...
So you made it Tita. Yes. Okay.
So Tita Emmy is after my mom.
Oh, that's beautiful. How did she react to that when you told her you were going to name your business after her?
Like any Filipino mom. So one of the funniest times was so we're not, we're not a restaurant where we do pop-ups and we do our summer clubs. But I remember Philly Mag had written us up in one of their articles, places to eat Filipino food in Philly. And I was like, oh my God, we're not even a restaurant, but they put us in there. So I was excited. So I took a screenshot of the piece that they wrote about Tita Emmys and I sent it to my mom. And I sent her the picture. And the first thing she said to me, and I feel like this kind of wraps up how she feels about it. She was like, you're not a chef. They wrote Chef Raquel. You're not a chef. And I was like, oh,
you're like, but I'm in the article.
We're in a magazine like this.
And your name is in it. Like,
so I feel like she low key is excited about it.
Low key. Emphasis on the low key.
Low key. Because, Filipino moms can be judgmental out of love, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But she always asks me to make her food. So she always asks, oh, can you make me this? So I feel like she's proud. Even if she doesn't say, I'm proud of you, I can feel it. So
she says it in her own way. Yes.
Exactly. She says it in her
by asking for food.
she shows love through like acts and services. So
yeah,
I think she's I know she's happy about it and she's proud. So that's all I need.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, if she's asking you for food, that says something. So that's enough. It's like, if that's how she showed her love to you, and then now she's requesting that. Yes. Yeah. Now she's requesting that of you. It's like, that's her way of saying like, you love me, that, feed me, like show me that you love me.
Now that I think about it, I don't think I know any other Filipino moms who would ask their kid to make them food.
Right. That's so true. That's true. Yeah. My mom would not ask me to make her food.
My mom would not ask.
There'd be food on the table before I even come home. It's like,
exactly.
How did you have the time to work a full-time job and have food on the table? It's like, she's just magical. Yeah. Mom's a magician.
Moms, man. They've been like, so amazed by them.
Yeah, for sure. May we be like them one day. May we be like them one day. Well, Raquel, yeah, like I said, what a wonderful conversation we've had today. For people that want to connect with you and learn more about you, how can they find you online?
I would say Instagram. So I have my food page, Get the Emmys, and then I have my personal page, Rack City, with a Q, since my name is Raquel. So I would say the gram is probably the easiest way to connect.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, let's see. Nani, any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I think that was a great conversation. Thank you so much, Raquel.
Thank you guys. You guys are so chill. I hope one day I'll get to meet y'all in person.
Yes, when we come to Philly for a supper club experience.
Yeah.
For real. You guys are to Philly. Have either of you been here?
I have not, no.
I did. So I'm in Virginia Beach, and my husband and I, we drove up to, maybe it was my mom. Oh my God, it was my mom. Okay. Speaking of moms. So we were on a road trip. Just laughing now. We were on a road trip to like Canada. It was like a full week. I told Nani about this like episodes ago. Yeah, we went on this road trip. It was the first time like I spent like 24/7 with my mom in like forever. Wow. So that was interesting. But anyway, we went all the way up to Canada to see family up there. Like, okay, this is what happened. Because like my sister had a show in New York. That's where she lives. She's like, I'm performing in New York, comes out and support. And I was like, okay, cool. This is just going to be a weekend thing. So like my mom messages me. She's like, hey, Jen, I booked a flight to your place a week before the play so we can go on a road trip. Like she already booked it.
She just invited herself. Yeah.
I was like, okay, mom. So we did that for a week. That was great. I normally don't confide in my husband in certain things, but when I was on that road trip, I did. I was like, honey, I need you right now. So he was very like, wow, this must be serious if you're going to like talk to me right now.
You're like, I'm about to rip my eyeballs out of their sockets.
he's like, you miss me right now? It was really funny. Hilarious. But anyway, so we did this week-long road trip, and then we saw my sister's performance. And on the way down, we dropped by Philly because we wanted to, I'm like totally forgetting what that one tourist spot is, but we did drop by there for like a minute.
Did you get cheesesteaks or something?
No, I have to, oh my God, I have to like scroll back through my pictures, but we went to like some historical like place, like historical spot.
Liberty Bell, probably, I'm guessing.
The Liberty, yes, thank you. Okay, we went to, thank you. See, okay, so we went to the Liberty Bell, and like here's the thing, like my mom, she doesn't care about history. She just likes taking pictures. So we were like, I think we were in New York, and we were driving, from New York to Philadelphia, and like I just remember like my mom was like, I want to see the Liberty Bell, and I was like. And it was like hours away. Like I forgot, I don't know how long the hours were, but I had a feeling that it probably would have closed by the time we showed up. And I was like, no, Mom, we're not going to make it. She's like, I want to see the Liberty Bell. And I was like, okay. So I'm driving.
Persistent.
Okay. So this is what happened. So we go to the Liberty Bell, and and like my mom knows nothing about the Liberty Bell. Okay. She knows jack about, I love you, Mom. She knows jack about the Liberty Bell, but she wanted to go to this Liberty Bell. So, and by the time we got there, there was like 10 minutes left. Okay. It was like 10 minutes left to like actually go inside. I was driving. I didn't know where parking was. So I dropped off my mom. I was like, okay, Mom, like, go. She's like, where is it? I was like, I don't know. There's the tourist thing. Like, go there. So then she goes there, and then like I drive all this way. I don't get to see the Liberty Bell. Like, I don't get to see it like at all. But like she managed to make it in. Like, I think like 5 minutes left.
Wow. Take her photo.
Yeah, she took her photo, and I'm here trying to find parking,
Which is not easy in Philadelphia. Parking is worse.
It was not easy because there was a festival that day too. Like there was something going on like in that area. So anyway, that was my experience in Philly for a little bit.
You gotta come back. So
we gotta redo that.
One weekend, I'll take you guys to where all the best places to eat, and then I'll cook for you too.
Yes.
Okay, cool. That would be fun when we can reconvene with we're going to try and do like maybe an annual in-person like event for the TFAW Project, which we started last year, but now with COVID and everything, that's probably not going to happen for a while. But whenever those restrictions are lifted, I think that's a great idea. I'm very, very down for that.
I would love that. You guys are
And we can
awesome.
we can skip the Liberty Bell, Jen.
No, that's the thing. I want to see the Liberty Bell.
Okay, we can go to the Liberty Bell.
My mom she's like, here's all the photos. And I was like, I was just so jealous. I was like, I care more about history than you do, you know? And like, you just.
And I don't even know why we're here.
Yeah, I was like, we had to pay a toll, you know, like we went through all this, like all these loops, like, or whatever, just to get there, all these obstacles. And I didn't get to see like a minute of it, you know?
That's hilarious.
So, yes, I do want to go back, and I want to see the Liberty Bell. So we're going to.
Other things. There's a bunch of cool stuff you guys would love in Philly. So
yeah,
yes,
cool. I love
do it.
Awesome. Well, I didn't realize we were still recording, so let me go ahead and.
Oh yeah. Me neither.
No, this will be fun to keep in the recording. No, I love it. This is me venting. I love you, Mom. She listens to my stuff, and that's the funny thing too. Is like I talk about my mom a lot, like in a lot of things, like other shows, and I'm very transparent about her. And then I share it with her, and she's like, "Oh, that was a good interview." And I was like, "You don't have like anything to say
like,
about
you're not
it?"
Offended? No.
Yeah, it's like that's why I love my mom. Like that's why, like her resiliency. Or I don't know if it's just like selective hearing or something, but I love her for that, because I could never hurt her feelings. Therefore, no one can hurt her feelings, you know. And I don't have to worry about her. Well, just to clarify,
we're not talking smack about Auntie. Okay, we love you, Auntie.
Yeah, we love her. She's just fun to talk about. She's a caricature for sure.
Yes.
So
yes.
But awesome. Well, this was a fun conversation. Raquel, thank you again so much for being on our show. And Nani, thank you for co-hosting with me as always.
Yes. Thank you, Raquel, for sharing with us and contributing to our project.
Thank you guys so much. This was awesome. I had fun talking with you guys. This is so chill.
Yes. So glad to hear that. That's always like a good thing to know. It's like, yes, we were chill. We were easy. To our listeners, thank you again so much for listening. And if you want to engage with us or you want to connect with Raquel, you can see all of that contact information in our show notes of this episode or visit our website, tfaproject.com. With that said, thank you all so much. And we look forward to speaking with you in the next episode. Tune in next time.
Bye-bye.